Continuing the Keanu-thon today, talking about and reviewing The Lake House, 2006 film, which stars Keanu Reeves. You also have Sandra Bullock in the film. Of course, years before this, both of them doing Speed, and they reunite here. And this is a good flick. Like I said a couple of times before, the romance films, a little hard to review because it's not a genre that I often go to. There's a few out there that I do like. At this point, with Keanu, I've reviewed A Walk in the Clouds, which is good, but, and nicely directed. But I don't see myself going back and like, okay, that's a rewatchable film for me. Sweet November, decent. Him and Charlize Theron had decent chemistry and has sweet moments. And here, again, you have Keanu and Sandra Bullock reunite. Um, it's not a Speed sequel. It's not Speed 3, which it would have been cool. Maybe they can still do Speed 3. But this is more of a straightforward romance film. And like I said, it's a good one. I think what it is with this film, the plot is interesting because, okay, you have Keanu's character as this architect, and he purchases this glass house on this lake, built and designed by his father. And soon enough, he starts to get letters in the mail from Sandra Bullock's character because she used to live at this lake house. She was, a former tenant, and she's this doctor. So, in the beginning of the film, Keanu and Sandra Bullock, they're exchanging letters. Um, they just start, they start to develop a thing for each other, and come to find out, they live at separate points in time. Keanu's character's in 2004, and Sandra Bullock, her character's in 2006. 2 years later, she lives in the city, and as they fall in love, they try to find whatever means to meet each other. So again, the story there is interesting because kind of a, I don't know if you want to say time travel, but where one character's living in the past and one's living in the future, and they try to find, again, whatever means to meet each other and discover more about each other and such. So the story is interesting, and as for the performances, Keanu is fine here. More dramatic role. And like I said, this is not, before this, him doing Sweet November, which is decent. I would say in that film, you got a little bit more laughs from Keanu, especially like, it's a hot dog, that scene. Here it's more of a straightforward dramatic performance, but it's still, Keanu still does a good job. Sandra Bullock, she's good in the film too. I think what makes this film work is, these two, because I think of the films that Keanu has done, in regards to this type of film, romance, films, he has good chemistry with Sandra Bullock. It's like, it worked before in Speed, and as a romance film, I thought it worked here. I thought it worked well. I thought, these two had really good chemistry. I will say that. And so these two in the film do fine. Supporting cast, you have Dylan Walsh in the film. I remember he was in Congo. I know he was in that show Nip Tuck. Nip Tuck. He's in the film. You have Christopher Plummer. He's the father of Keanu, his character in the film. So it's nice to nice to see Christopher Plummer in the film. Directed by, I know I'm gonna mess up this name, Alejandro Agresti. I don't know what else this guy's directed, but I thought he did, a good job here. And the only thing with that with this film that I would say, it, like at times, especially like in the second act, between the second and third act, I don't know, it seems like at times it kind of got a little muddled. where it's like they're trying to explain, or with the story, like there's certain plot points in the film, like it gets a little bit muddled, and they don't really explain why these two live in separate times. I guess they leave it up to you to, uh, again, it's hard. They don't really go into that, so they leave it up to the viewer, or, it's more of a, I don't know. It is a fantasy movie, like fantasy romance, but again, they don't really explain why they live in separate times. But I understand it's a romance film. You gotta turn the brain off, I guess. But I mean, it is a unique idea, the premise. And again, interesting direction from this director. I don't know what else he's done, but I like the lake house. I thought the architecture of the lake house was neat, and and there's like one or two songs in the film that I didn't mind, like the one song by Paul McCartney. Um, I forgot the name of it, but it comes in the film, like it appears in the film, and I thought the song was fine. I mean, there's not a whole lot I can say here. I mean, Keanu and Sandra Bullock have good chemistry. I've mentioned that. Um, like if of all the women that Keanu's worked with, I mean, you can't. These two to me were like perfect. Yeah, I mean, it worked before in Speed and worked more. Worked again here. I mean, of course, if you were to ask me you know, would I much rather have a Speed 3 or the Lake House? Of course, I would say, okay, give me Speed 3. Maybe, around this time they could have done that, but I mean, they can definitely work again. I mean, Speed 3, I don't know if they'll ever do it, but it was nice to see these two, reunite here. And like I said, even though in the second to third act, the story or the like some of the plot points in the film, like some of the explanation gets a little muddled. Like it's kind of, I'm not saying that, the whole film, but again, it seems like at certain points it's like, I'm not going to say confusing, but just a little bit muddled on, where this is going. And, but overall, I mean, I don't know what more I can add or say. It's a romance film, straightforward romance film with an interesting premise and two good leads. So, yeah, I mean, I would say a good flick, good romance flick. Uh, Again, I don't know what else this director's done, but yeah, so definitely solid. Again, I keep saying this, but interesting premise. Even though maybe they could have explained that, maybe they could have explained, how this happened, or give us some idea. And even with some moments in the film where it kind of gets a little bit muddled. And it's not a long movie; it's an hour and a half. So it's not a long movie at all. But definitely, I would say definitely good, especially for these two, which they have good chemistry once again. And a good song in there by Paul McCartney. But that's my review of The Lake House. Damn. That's what happens when you live out in the middle of nowhere. But yeah, my review of The Lake House, short review, but again, there's not a lot that I can add, or, not a lot. I'm trying to get it out. There's not a whole lot to say. It's straightforward, so I recommend it. It's a good, sweet story. So that's my review of The Lake House. And next up for the Keanu-thon, I'll be talking about and reviewing Street Kings. So stay tuned for that, and have a good one.